I do not want to do this video. Let me tell you what man, this is a tough loss. That's a tough loss because there's so many things to blame. Like, it's not just, oh, we got killed in the passing game, which we did, or oh, we called a bad offensive game, which we did, or oh, we had so many stupid mistakes and penalties, which we also did. There's so many things that you can point to as reasons that Michigan State lost that game, and really that just means that it's a game that they deserve to lose. Um, Getting their first loss handed to them by Purdue, who is now 6-3, and maybe at the top of the West after this win. I'm not too sure how their standings are looking right now, but a tough loss, a bad loss. Michigan State is still a better team than Purdue, but they could have fooled all of us today. I think the big story will probably be the defense getting shredded. Purdue had 536 yards passing, and countless times was there nobody even around the receiver. That and 12 and 19, Purdue converted on their third down plays, and a lot of them again like third and longs too, not just a third and one where you can run it up the gun and convert, and you kind of expect to keep the drive going there. 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, pass plays that Michigan State just wasn't able to defend all day. And they had multiple opportunities to get off the field, and they really didn't take advantage of any of them. Okay, yeah. Purdue tied at the top of the West. Bell was the factor for Purdue. Yeah, I think he had, looking at it right here, 11 catches, 217 yards. Just an insane game from him. And really all of Purdue's receivers, man, they had 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 5 receivers over 50 yards receiving, which is a staggering amount. Michigan State only had 2. And our top receiver had 73 yards. And for Purdue, they had 3 receivers who had more than 73 yards receiving. So the difference was obviously, their passing game. Because it was so explosive, they were able to keep the ball moving down the field, and they were able to keep their offense on, keep our offense off, and just convert when they needed to. Whenever they needed a big play, it seemed like they always got it, and it seemed like Michigan State was never able to make that big play on defense outside of that one fumble that Darius Snow forced. But not a good game from anybody in the secondary. I know they had a couple guys out there. Kimbrough got burned a lot. Brantley got burned a lot. So just a bad game from that unit in general. And it's a unit that's been shaky all year. The pass defense, I see that in some of the comments here. The pass defense has been scary all year, and it just hasn't burned them to this extent yet. And then today, that's kind of been, it kind of was their Achilles heel, and it ended up, coming back to finally catch up with Michigan State. Because it's not like they've just been, a no-fly zone all year, and then this game came out of nowhere. They've been pretty bad all year. Now, they've made more plays all year than they've made today, without a doubt. Made some big plays when they needed to. Obviously, they had the interception at the end of the game last week. Xavier Henderson made a play against Miami in week 2, and today we didn't see any of that. So it was just all the bad pass defense that we've seen without any of the big plays. And even on one of Purdue's touchdowns, Brantley got froze. It looked like he was looking in the backfield when the ball was snapped, so the receiver was able to get off a really clean release. And then the O'Connell, is at the quarterback, threw it into the back of the end zone, and that led to the first of many Purdue's touchdowns. Boo! That's exactly how I feel. Just boo with 100 different O's. I wonder what happens when the refs don't give you the calls. I guess, but unlike a certain, bitch ass fan base, that's not something that, we're going to say lost us the game. I do think Michigan State got the short end of the stick on more calls than Purdue did, but it was by far Michigan State's play that cost them the game, way more than any call that the officials could have made or did made or something like that. Then it's just something that you have to play through. Said it was karma. I thought Michigan outplayed them last week, but had all their big mistakes basically right at the end. Didn't expect them to wear out like that. Whoever is Miss Naylor, yeah, I thought Naylor was a big miss, obviously, and not him being a big play threat is nice, but where I thought they really missed him, and where I felt like they failed to make the most of their passing game was underneath. It seemed like Peyton Thorne got flushed out of the pocket a lot, and usually when that happens, the defense it's a little bit more chaotic, and receivers able to break free down the field and like a broken play, and you can get a completion. And today, they didn't. ESPN didn't do, or ABC, I guess, didn't do a good job of really showing the replays, where I couldn't see like the full field version. But usually when the quarterback takes off and runs and only gets 3 or 4 yards, it's because everything was covered downfield. And where Naylor would have been nice, obviously he has a lot of speed, and that would have been really good for getting open some of those short routes, or even if it wasn't a big 40-yard play he was hitting on one of those like 3rd and 8s where Thorne had to roll out and only gain 4 yards, and now we're sending the punt team on. He could have thrown it underneath. He could have thrown it right at the sticks and got us a first down. And that's where I think we missed Naylor the most today, was in the underneath game. Not even necessarily the big plays, although that helps, right? Because you have to stretch the defense, and they always have to respect that he can go over the top on him. But Naylor being out was huge. They didn't have their left tackle today either, and I thought the offensive line did a pretty poor job of holding up. Even on Michigan State's first touchdown, where it looked like Thorne was probably about to get sacked. He had to fight through that and then kind of step up in the pocket and throw to, I think Mosley was the one who caught the first touchdown. So I didn't think the offensive line played well. The kicker was hurt, and they missed a field goal on, their first drive, I think. So there was just a ton of injuries for Michigan State, and they had their defensive tackle thrown out for targeting, and I think it was in the second half or right at the end of the first half or something. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that again just went against Michigan State, whether it was players missing. Or things that happened in the game, and they weren't able to overcome it because the team, frankly, they don't have a lot of depth. So you start taking away some of the offensive line starters, and I know they do like the shift change on the offensive line, but you take away one of those guys, and you start taking away some of their other big playmakers. It's a team that I think everyone agrees they overachieved at 8-0. And if you're starting to take away some of those key guys, it's definitely not, it's certainly not a traditional undefeated team, and a very beatable team, as we saw today. It's over. No, I don't know that Michigan State season's necessarily over. So it's the same thing that we said about Michigan after last week's game. Is not that I guess they do kind of control their own destiny. If they win out, if they beat Ohio State, they'll certainly be still in the conversation for the Big Ten, and they would have obviously the head-to-head wins over both Michigan and Ohio State, who you figure would be their competition for the Big Ten East. Do I think that's likely to happen? No, I didn't. But even if they beat Purdue, I wouldn't think them beating Ohio State is likely. But it's still in the realm of possibility. So I don't think Michigan State's season is over, but this is a game that they're going to have to bounce back from. But there's still a path to make the Big Ten title game. And if you're in the Big Ten title game with one loss, if you win, that probably gets you your ticket into the playoff. But that again, that requires winning the rest of your games, and nobody would be high on that, especially after this performance. But it's not like Ohio State looked great against Nebraska today, and I think we've just seen weirder things in college football in general. So I don't think this loss knocks Michigan State out of what their ultimate goal is. Again, however unlikely you or I may think it is, it's certainly not an impossibility for Michigan State to to win out here. Purdue's I think it's impressive Purdue was able to do it twice in one season. Typically, they got that one game in them where they can knock off a top 5 team. This year they're able to do it. They're able to do it twice, and I saw someone here say they were the tougher team today, and absolutely, there's no excuses to lose to Purdue. Purdue came out and they really kicked Michigan State's ass today, up and down the field. No matter what you look at, they were able to do it almost strictly through the air. I think they only had maybe 60 rushing yards total. Not even. So they were one-dimensional. You knew that coming in, and they were still able to get, whatever they wanted. They passed for 540 yards, damn near. So Purdue was able to come in and do everything that they wanted to do, and Michigan State was, unable to stop it. And while one guy did, most of the damage, being Bell, again, they spread it around, right? Well, we say earlier they had, I think, 5 receivers who had over 50 yards receiving, which means that everybody can be, a threat really at any time. And that's what we saw today. They scored 40 points. They were able to score in the red zone when they got down there, which, was kind of the strength of Michigan State's defense all year, was them being able to get pressure on the quarterback. And then when they got in the red zone, what you heard all year with Michigan State was bend, don't break, which means they gave up a lot of yards, but didn't necessarily give up a lot of points. And today, Purdue, I think they went 3 touchdowns in 5 red zone trips. Or maybe the one at the end where they were they were trying to score a touchdown, but they were mainly just trying to run the clock. That could have pushed it to 3 out of 6, but Purdue was able to score. It seemed like whenever they wanted to, and Michigan State's defense had no answers. I don't think it was a particularly great game called by the offense either. I would have liked to see Kenneth Walker get more work. He had 22 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown, which is going to look good on the in the box score. I think it's like 6 yards a carry almost. But I think there's a point in time in the second half, like throughout the third quarter, and I think like half the fourth quarter basically, where he only had like 5 carries in that second half, and that's just unacceptable, especially at a time when Michigan State was, I think they were tied at 21. They're 21-28, something like that. So it's not like they just got down a ton and were down 21 points in the second half, and then you have to pass to keep up. So I thought they abandoned the run game too early. I know Thorne looked pretty good early on. You had the drop from Jaden Reed, which hurt a drive, which Michigan State could have scored on. Again, I thought they moved the ball pretty well in their own right. They had almost 200 rushing yards and had almost 300 passing yards. So it's not like Purdue's defense was shutting down the Spartan offense, but it just seemed like it seemed like we played the kind of game that Purdue wanted us to play, and you should never you should never do that. You should always do what you want to do. And I would just like to see more, runs from Michigan State, because I think that's how they could have wore Purdue down. at the end of the game, and then obviously it would have kept the offense off the field, Purdue's offense off the field, and your defense wouldn't have given up, 600 yards. And I think you could have played. I think you could have just played a closer game if they went a little bit more run heavy. And you can say that's hindsight. I was thinking that during the game. Obviously, that it didn't work now. It doesn't. It seems like a pretty obvious way, right? Don't do what you did to lose by 2 scores to Purdue. But I wish the offense would have called a more run-heavy game, and then you obviously just wish the defense was more focused. I don't even know if it was necessarily a preparation issue. They just didn't seem like they were focused throughout the game. Like they had. We mentioned the Brantley one earlier, where on the first Purdue touchdown, and then he had another one where David Bell had that highlight where he was tiptoeing on the sideline. And even on that one, it looked like Brantley thought he had some safety help, and he didn't, so Bell was wide open for a big gain, and then he was able to gain a bunch of yards after the catch as well. And Purdue had that pretty cool trick play. Actually, I don't necessarily know how you're supposed to defend that, but it just seemed like there was a lack of focus from some of the guys on defense today. And then again, the penalties. 6 penalties for Michigan State, 70 yards. They had the targeting penalty. They had a penalty in, I believe it was still the first quarter, where they had a punt, which it set Purdue back at like the 3-yard line. But there was an illegal formation or something along those lines on the punt, so they had to repunt it, and then it was like a 50-yard difference. Basically, Purdue got the ball at midfield from where the first punt would have ended, and that's just the penalty that again is so easily avoidable, and that's on the coaching staff, and that's been another problem all year. So I think the big kind of theme for this game is the problems that Michigan State has seen all year. They've had probably more punt penalties, pre-snap punt penalties than any team in the country. It seems like they're just never able to get that right for whatever reason, and that obviously cost them big on that drive. And then their secondary, which has been probably a more glaring issue all year, and just everything kind of culminated in Michigan State losing this game. And I mean, now you get a lot of comments saying like Michigan State sucks and everything else. I don't think they suck. Were they the third best team in the country? Probably not, but they were undefeated, and they did beat Michigan, and nobody else that was undefeated had a better resume than Michigan State did. And eventually you have to earn your way into some of these top hot X team conversations, and you can't really do that with losses. So I understood them being ranked 3. Again, I didn't think they were the third best team in the country, but they should have beat Purdue. Again, there's really no excuse to lose this game, but the season isn't over for them, and we'll see what happens next week when they take on Maryland. I think it should be a bounce back game. You get Maryland at home, and then you go play at Ohio State. So Maryland next week, we'll see how they come out. What you would like to see is just them dominate a really bad Maryland team. But I think, at least as of today, Tagovailoa might have been the top passer in the Big Ten this year. So maybe the secondary kind of rears its ugly head again. But I think I think Michigan State was overrated just by the definition of them being at number 3. Again, if I don't think they're the third best team in the country, saying they're overrated at 3, it makes sense. They're definitely not a bad team, and they're better than anyone thought they'd be coming into the season. And they still do have all of their goals in front of them, even though it might not feel like it right now. It's definitely a bummer of a loss and something you can't afford. But like in 2015 when you lost to Nebraska, and the 2015 team is better than this team without question. But you lost to Nebraska, but you still had your pathway to the Big Ten title and to the playoff, and I think that is still true this year. You still have your pathway. Beat Ohio State, then you have the tiebreaker over both Michigan and Ohio State. Obviously beat Maryland. Hopefully at this point this is a formality. And then you have the end game at Penn State, which could get tricky because I don't think Penn State is an easy win by any means necessary. But take it one game at a time, and keep winning, and things will fall in your favor. And I think for probably all Spartan fans, again, this is a disappointing loss, but if you can beat one of Ohio State or Penn State, I think overall you'll still probably take this season as a massive success. MSU transfer portals got exposed for the frauds they are. I mean, the defensive transfers, they haven't really been good all year. Ronald Williams, he's been like cycling in and out of being a starter. Kulveris Crouch has had moments of some really good football, and he's also had moments of some pretty bad football. But Kenneth Walker had a really good day today. Again, almost 6 yards a carry, 140 yards and touchdown. Would have liked to see him get a lot more work than he got, but that's not how the game went. And eventually the defense, everything else, it just led to a loss. But that is what we have for you guys. Listen to the Sports Carnage podcast, where I'm sure we'll talk about this game, and then we'll talk about probably the Michigan game that's going on right now, although I actually don't have my TV on, so I don't know what's happening there. And the Lions are actually on a bye this week, which I think is good for everybody's health. And then, that's kind of it. If you guys haven't, go listen to our past Sports Carnage. It dropped 2 days ago, maybe. We had a whole ton of fun about the Michigan State game. And it's not just me on the podcast, so it's not just one Michigan State fan doing all the talking. It was split, 2 Michigan fans, 2 Michigan State fans. So, we had some pretty fun times there. And then I'm sure if Michigan pulls off this win, there will be a more fun time for Michigan on this next podcast. So go follow that. That is in the description here on Facebook. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it is in the description below. The Sports Carnage Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. And then you can find us on social media as well. Facebook, Sports Carnage Podcast. On Twitter, it's just Sports Carnage. And then on YouTube, it's Sports Carnage. And then wherever you find us, follow, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of that fun stuff, so that you can see everything that we can post and we can invade your minds. So thank you guys so much for joining me today, and have a safe night.